All right, y'all. Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with your boy, Jeff Charles, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over politics. And I've got another great show for you today. I've got another very interesting guest. We've been going back and forth with this guy, interacting on Twitter and in other ways. And he's very sharp, got a lot of great ideas, really understands the political environment in which we live. But before I bring him on, I want to remind you to like this, share this, and you got to subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, something's wrong with you. You need to rectify that. Luckily, I have the antidote. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. That way you'll be updated whenever I upload a new interview or a new show. Also, check out my Substack, Chasing Liberty. Get there with libertychasers.com. Become a subscriber. Check out the content. I'm highlighting a lot of local issues. I'm talking about a lot of liberty-minded ideas, strategy, all that great stuff. So check it out. libertychasers.com. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my favorite person, Miss Doni the Don, who's going to be helping me with this interview. Oh, looks like he got a little. Looks like it's not connected. Might be the Russians. Let's see. There you are. All right. Can you hear me okay? All right. Yes, I can hear you. Beautiful. How you doing, my love? Oh, I think we have
I'm great. The internet keeps kicking me off.
Oh, no.
My internet keeps kicking me off.
Well, let's hope that stops. There's always technical issues whenever we do this. I don't know why. I still think it's the Russians. Yeah. All right. So we're going to bring on our guest without further ado. One who I already have a problem with because he's probably the first person I've had on my show that has a cooler voice than I do. I give you Carbon Mike. What's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going, man? Good to be
here.
You
hear that? Y'all hear that? Yeah. But anyway, Carbon Mike, we've been, like I said, we've been going back and forth a lot and having a lot of great conversations. And you've got some very, very interesting insights on politics. So that's why we wanted to get you on. But before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My real name is Dexter Taylor. I'm a software engineer. Been in the software industry for almost 30 years now. I used to be I guess you call it lefty, progressive, what have you, but I left the left sometime starting around, I think, 2007, 2008. And when I did that, I didn't immediately kind of jump over to the right. I kind of thought it was more important to figure out what I believed and why and kind of develop my ideas. So that's what I did. And I did that for a while and ended up coming up with a set of principles that I thought could allow us as Americans, in other words, to have higher quality disagreements, right? To have higher quality arguments about the things that matter to us, right? And that set of principles is called foundationism. Foundationalism is something different, but this is foundationism. So I started that, wrote a 10-point manifesto, and started something called the Foundationist Society, which is kind of a weird little think tank for all of us who are kind of conservative leaning, but politically homeless. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
right.
That's, yeah.
Interesting. I like, so what you said, what kind of disagreements?
That we could have higher quality disagreements.
Higher quality. I like that. I've never heard that before, but you're right. I mean, that is what's needed, but I mean, yes. I like that term. I might have to steal that. So,
yeah, go for it. I just want my 10%. Just make sure you give me my 10%. Don't make me come looking for you. Don't make me come looking for you.
I won't. I know you're down with the Second Amendment, so I won't. We'll be talking about that in a second, though. But I was curious, can you kind of walk us through the transition from left to politically homeless, right-leaning person?
Yes, sir. When I can't even remember when it was that I kind of became politically aware, but I know that I became politically aware in this environment that was, in my parents' house, right? Which was when I was still living in my parents' house, when I was still going to junior high school, what have you. And that was an environment, right, where the social conservative values were extremely strong. Okay. I mean, I grew up getting like my parents kept their foot in my ass like constantly, right? I grew up getting my ass beat, right? See, you know what it is exactly. So you know what I'm saying. And everyone was fanatical about education, fanatical about hitting the books, fanatical about these values that, you know, when you hear conservatives talk, these are the things they talk about. Okay, but I also, right, grew up hearing all these people, these elders, you know, my parents, their family and friends, so on, so criticize, for example, American foreign policy. Criticize, I guess, what we would now call globalism, or what we would now call neoliberal economics, because they had firsthand experience of it in this hemisphere, in the Caribbean, for example, right? So I grew up in that environment. I grew up in an environment where people, it was understood that that the government was just lying to you about certain things, and that's not really how it went down, right? Okay, so I was steeped in all of this, and I guess I defaulted to a kind of progressivism, but I never saw, you know, as a young person, I'd never seen any contradiction between progressivism, right, or between even kind of you could say, like, it wasn't quite black nationalism, but something like that, you know, back when I had my dread swinging and we were, you know, talking in the cipher about this, that. But
I had dreads too back in the day.
See, there you go. You know what it is, right? So I guess I never saw any contradiction between those positions. And they were always kind of loosely held as far as political allegiances go. In other words, I was never particularly rah-rah for any party, right? I was never like a huge fan of the Democrats. It just seemed to me kind of axiomatic that they were less bad than the Republicans, right? And that, by the way, was because of the kind of the sneering contempt I was accustomed to hearing from Republicans when it came to black people. A lot of people alive today don't remember that. I do. It came from this idea that, well, how come you guys are not consistent? How come you talk about smaller government, but you're always on the side of the police, and the police work for the government? So anyway, you know, grew up like this, and at a certain point, I just became increasingly disgusted with the left. Okay, and I think this was around the time. You know what it was? One of the big watershed moments for me was like around the time of Occupy Wall Street, right?
Really? Okay.
Yes, because at that point, you know, I had done a lot more reading. I was a little bit less of a dumbass, right? I kind of had a little bit more historical depth, right? And I was beginning to understand a few things about class, right, and economics, and how race and the obsession with race as such is really a distraction. Do you know what I'm saying? I'd begun to kind of internalize those ideas, and I was fascinated by, you know, I'd started reading stuff like The Road to Wigan Pier, you know, George Orwell. I had started to understand the struggles of, for example, black people in America as part of as a noble tradition, but as part of this larger tradition about the struggle between the kind of the popular, between the productive class, right, and the parasitic oligarchy. Do you see what I'm saying? And I began to see, like, yeah, this is, and I was identifying very strongly with working class people, like my mom and dad. You know, my dad was in the construction trades; he was a union guy, and I like really felt a strong kind of way about that. And my mother was an RN, and I felt a strong kind of way. I felt this, I kind of started to understand this notion of solidarity for real, without all the weird commie bullshit. Okay.
Right.
So now, Occupy Wall Street happens, right? And you know, what was that? It was a response to the financial crisis, which was a very small number of people blowing up the economy and then insisting that the rest of us pay for it, right? And so from what I could see, there was this huge groundswell of support for, we need to do something about this kind of thing, okay? And I actually went down to Zuccotti Park and talked to people and tried to kind of reason with people. And, well, we need to figure out what being on the left really means, because this is not cutting it. Remember, I was still on the left.
Yeah.
And what I saw was that, like, it's just, I saw all this kind of like self-indulgent street theater. You know what I'm saying? And it was like people doing all the same lefty things, they're painting their faces and they're banging on drums and they got signs up and they're spelling America with 3 Ks.
The performative stuff, the performative activism.
Exactly. That's 100% right. The performative activism. And I was like, and me looking around, what I saw was that there was black folks, white folks, Asian folks, that was everybody, and there were people from different walks of life. There were like housewives who had driven into Manhattan from Long Island because they had been hit by this crisis. In other words, what I saw, right, was a chance. What I saw was the opportunity or the potential for a transcendent moment, right? And I saw that these people were in the process of dropping the ball. And they weren't just in the process of dropping the ball; they were delighted to drop the ball. And
very familiar,
right? And I also saw that the media, figures in the media that I had respect for, were kind of backing that up. Like Rachel Maddow was like, "Yeah, that's right. They don't have any plans to run for office and stuff like that because they understand that politics is dirty. They're just going to just stay in the street." And they were celebrating this lack of focus and this self-indulgence and this childishness. And I was like, who do you people think you are? Like, you want to be involved, you want to change history, but you don't want history to change you. Is that it? You know?
Dexter, you remind me a lot of Malcolm X. We were just listening to the ballot or the bullet. Yeah. And when you said you were back then, you were like politically stupid, I wouldn't use that terminology. I'm gonna use what Malcolm said. He said politically immature. And I think the thing is, what we have to do is, I know it's hard for you to start educating people because there's so many people politically immature and they do not want to change. They like where they're at, they're comfortable. Yeah. And then when you're discussing these things, I was like, yo, Jeff, I didn't realize Malcolm X was throwing mini slugs, hardcore slugs at MLK. He was talking about how MLK was doing it. He's talking about we shall overcome and sitting down. Like, no, we're gonna start. If you swing at me, I'm swinging back. Yeah, and self-defense. It was powerful, right? Exactly. And they painted that out to be violent. So nowadays, if you say anything about the government, being terrible, they want to put you on a list. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's inspiring. I like hearing that because you're making me think about Malcolm X again. We were just listening to Malcolm.
Well, and honestly, when I think about you and when I talk to you and when I hear you even talking now, like what you're talking about is political maturity. You were we'll get to the right, but you were talking about this stuff on the left, and what you were describing was political immaturity. These people didn't know what they were doing, and sometimes it's intentional political immaturity. They don't really want to do anything about it, but they want to make it look like they're doing something, kind of like our government does. The activist class does that too. So it's very interesting to hear you describe what you saw and the people you talked to, and things like that. So, actually, if you wanted to say something.
Yeah. I just want to say, I think it's political. I would say it's political. I got to think about that because it's not my, look, when I'm talking to people, to grown people who don't agree with me politically, I know I don't like being condescended to. Sure. So I don't like to think about grown people who disagree with me as being immature. I just think it's like we are, either your focus is different or maybe your thing. But certainly a lot of these young people, right, college age people, for example, yes, they are politically immature. I have no problem saying that, right, because we've been around for longer. We know a little bit more. But it's more than that. It's more like that energy, that youthful energy. And here's where I always keep turning the blame back to us, back to our side, back to conservatives, right, is that it was our responsibility to channel that energy. It has always been our responsibility because that's what it means to educate young people, right? It's to channel their potential energies. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's to channel those abilities. The whole point is that you have this creature in front of you whose brain is exploding 6 waves from Sunday and making connections and right and reaching out and getting interested in things. And it is our job to channel that into something productive. Yeah. So, yes, we know that the left has conducted a long march through the institutions. Okay. But the reason it was a march and not an actual military campaign, the reason it was a march and not house to house fighting as it should have been, is because of us. Okay. It's because of conservatives. It's because we've spent the last, at least since the end of the Cold War, possibly before, talking about how everything comes down to markets. No sense of beauty, no sense of tradition, no sense of transcendence, no sense of higher value, no theological grounding. Yeah, it's just markets. And so now we're all surprised when into that vacuum, bad ideas come rushing in. Well, nature abhors a vacuum. That's a problem. And that's our problem. And now we want to sit, not you obviously, but now we want to sit and sit back and say, it's social media. Oh yeah, you scored a big win. You own those liberals or what have you. It's like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. So anyway,
and that's more of the performative activism.
It's performative just on the other side. And again, it's like no one is talking about what they actually believe, what they actually are for, and that's what I'm interested in. What are we for? What do we believe? If we're conservatives, what are we conserving? What do we believe? Not who do we hate, right? Not how do we salami slice ourselves into the smallest possible unit, right? But what are we actually for? And that's a thing that is lacking in the American, in American conservatism as such, and it's something whose lack I was aware of when I became disgusted with the with the left, which is why I started Foundationism, because I was like, none of this is good enough. There are certain habits of thought that we need no matter which side we're on, and we have to improve the quality of the arguments we're having, the quality of the disagreements we're having. So,
Mike, I have a question. So
yes,
when I look at because I was temporarily MAGA and I'm now in the Liberty movement. When I look at where I was at and where I am now, it seems consistent that the focus is on the team and not necessarily the principles. So it looks like, okay, if I'm owning the libs, I'm fighting for my team. But if your team isn't fighting for any of the principles that they say that they have, when people who are not voters at all, because some people are mad and fed up and don't want to get involved, they can't take you seriously and don't want to join and become a part of it. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I don't feel like it's changing anytime soon. I've seen a lady just today and yesterday get attacked because she said, you know what? I voted for Trump for the past 2 years and I'm done. I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet, but I'm looking into a third party.
Yeah.
Then Cat Turd and some other MAGA people started harassing her. So you said you want people to think for themselves, but as soon as they do, you have a problem.
And then they get mad when people call MAGA a cult.
Yeah. Well, don't act like a cult, right? And exactly. And look, I have a lot of MAGA people in my circles. I love my MAGA people, but that's the thing. It's like I'm interested in the principles first, and so I also have a lot of people in my circles, maybe fewer, but still a lot, who voted for and intend to vote for Joe Biden. Now, I have no use for Joe Biden, but I love my people who vote Democratic. I wish they didn't, but I'm not going to insult them because of it. And by the way, I want to just say that, it was, you can't imagine what a breath of fresh air it was, Jeff, for me to read, like the first time I read something that you'd posted on Twitter, right? I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, so there's another brother who's like conservative or conservative leaning and who understands why I'm so disgusted with the right, who understands why I'm so disgusted with this non-policy and this non-strategy of trying to insult people into being on your side. And I look, and some of this, to be fair, you could say that some of this is because people are just very anxious about the next election cycle. Let's say that, right? And in other words, let's steel man that. Let's say like these people are real patriots. They're 100%. They love America, okay? And they're so nervous about what is happening to our country that they think that they just have this sense of crisis and emergency, and that's what drives them to be a little bit shrill sometimes. Okay, let's say that. But nonetheless, conservatives have to know better. In other words, first of all, there's always some goddamn excuse why you have to catastrophize an election. There's always some goddamn excuse why this is the most important test election ever in history. Always, right?
Every single time.
We have lived through every single most important election.
Listen, remember when Ralph Nader was the devil incarnate because Ralph Nader stole votes from and remember back then when Ralph Nader ran, right? I was still on the left, and I was hearing my fellow lefties say, Ralph Nader is this and that. I was like, well, hang on a second. Like those votes don't belong to Al Gore or whoever's running. Nader was running
not
against.
Entitled.
Yeah, exactly. It's like how about everybody run for president? Whoever wants to run, and whoever gets the most votes, that's the person. And it's like if you don't know any better than to steal some of Ralph Nader's ideas and add them to your platform, then you deserve to lose. I'm very sorry. But this thing of catastrophizing elections, this goes back to, again, one of the things I've been focused on, which is the fundamentals. And that is an example to me of the fundamental of virtue, the fundamental of being able to govern one's passions, right? And the ancient Greeks understood that the passions were the enemy of reason. And so I'm no longer inclined to accept the excuse that, well, I was scared about this, and that's why I started going off and talking shit about people and this and this and that, right? Oh, I was feeling whatever way. It's like, everyone, God gave all the creatures fear, like the wild beasts, right, are capable of being fearful. Okay, we're the ones who have the divine gift of reason, right? We're the ones who are capable of managing those passions, right? So if we don't use it, well, whose fault is it if I don't use my reason? It's my fault. Mm-hmm. It is not the fault of the liberals and their magical brainwashing machine. It's my fault. So.
It's like the fear in the left is controlling the right, and you would think when I was mad, I'm like, oh, these people are so smart. These people get it. And then I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I changed my mind. I was tripping. Yeah. So, with your work, what are you doing locally? Because I know you said you were doing some local work as well.
Well,
to put out your information.
Well, so locally, there's a few things I'm doing locally, which have been complicated by recent events. Let's just say that. So again, I live in New York City. So locally, believe it or not, most of the people in the Foundationist Society are actually not from here. They're not even from the U.S. Most of my people are from the U.K. If you want to find out more about Foundationism, the best place to go is to the Infinite Jigsaw podcast on YouTube, which is run by my buddy Danny D from the UK. Shout out to Danny. It's just if you want to like more or less the Foundationist position on environmental matters, you'd go to climate resistance on Twitter, CLIM 8 resistance. That's Ben Pyle, other buddy from the UK. Both of those guys are in the Foundationist Society. Ben Pyle, there you go. Right?
Yeah, I was one of the reasons why he lost his job and got canceled.
Wow.
What?
With the Raisin Bread podcast?
With the what podcast?
Raisin Bread podcast, or is this a different Ben?
It might be a different Ben then, because this Ben's British. Was Raisin Bread?
No, he's British too, but it might be a different Ben though.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a whole other story though.
Yeah. But so locally, mostly what I've done hasn't borne the name Foundationism or anything like that. I've just done that under my real name and just with people I know, and that's mostly like teaching young guys, like counseling young men. That's what I do locally. There's like
Okay.
handful of young men in my circle, and I counsel them. Sometimes it's like that. Like I have one guy who's interested in tech, so he'll call me and we'll get on a screen share and I'll show him some Python code, or I'll show him how to do this or how to do data modeling or what have you. There's another guy who is in my circle. I came to know him because he's related to another guy who I know from my music circles. And it's just, I was just like a kind of just a sounding board for him to call up, and when he was feeling kind of way, or when he was trying to figure himself out or what have you. And I'm really proud of that dude. He actually, I won't say his name because I don't want to put him on the spot, but he actually shipped out, I guess it was about a year ago, maybe a little bit less than a year ago. He shipped out with the United States Navy as a machinist's mate, submarine duty.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So that's what I do locally, right? I try to be a good neighbor, and I try to be a good kind of resource for young people who just need someone to talk to, and especially young men, because I think I feel a special kind of way about the fact that as a society, we've decided to devalue manhood and manliness, and that comes.
Right.
Listen, that comes with it. That's part of the territory. Given that if you have a society that's devaluing everything, that's devaluing itself, then of course manliness and manhood come along with that. But that's the special mission I'm on, right? So that's the local thing. Online, again, I'm Carbon Mike online. I'm Dexter Taylor in real life. I went public very recently. So Future Radiocast is my Twitter handle. And there, I'm just trying to develop my ideas. I use Twitter as a tool for thinking out loud, for practicing concision, right? For figuring out how to get it, how to talk about an idea, how to engage with something quickly and concisely in a way that's compelling or funny or both, right? And that's kind of what I use that for. And then I use YouTube for kind of longer format things, longer format discussions, interviews, things like that. And the Foundationist Manifesto. You see, the other problem is I suck at marketing, right? So I'm terrible at marketing.
Well, actually, let's give you a chance. I've been wanting to ask this. You brought a foundationist. What, in a nutshell, so you can practice your concision, what is foundationism? What is that?
Foundationism is a discipline of thought it's a discipline of thought that's focused on trying to get to the root of what is important, politically, socially, culturally, what have you. It's based on the idea that when you walk into a building, your foundation is neither to the left of you nor to the right of you. And so the foundationist principles are not exclusive to either the left or the right. They are fundamental habits of thought and perception that if we try to engage with them and if we try to embody those habits, we will end up having higher quality discussions and higher quality arguments about what's important to us. And there's a 10-point manifesto. It's see deeply, listen closely, reason honestly, speak clearly, act bravely, deny the self, defend the individual, respect tradition, face the present, and cultivate the future. That's our manifesto. Very simple. Okay. And we have in Foundationism, there are three archetypes. There's the archetype of the forge, the library, and the tower. And the idea is that the forge is kind of the locus of practical work. Okay. The library is the locus of study and research and historical knowledge and recording. And the tower represents, how can I put this? The law of heaven, right? The moral imperative, theology. Okay. And so the idea is that the things you do have to have some kind of balance between the forge spirit, the library spirit, and the tower spirit. You see what I'm saying? In other words, if you spend too much time in the library, right, but you never go into the forge, well, then you're book smart, but you have no practical application. Right. If you spend all your time in the forge, great, you're very productive. But if you never spend any time in the library, you're not recording what you've done. So your knowledge will be lost to posterity, right? If you spend too much time in the forge and the library, and no time in the tower, then you may be productive and smart, but you don't know why you do what you do. You are devoid of kind of the moral grounding. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you spend all your time in the tower, obviously, then the next band of barbarians across the way will come and burn your little tower down with you in it. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, that's right.
So when we think about institutions, when we think about different patterns in history, when we think about them in terms of not just the 10 points of our manifesto, but also in terms of these three archetypes: the forge, the library, and the tower. Jesus Christ is very interesting to us, right? Because Jesus Christ was a forge man, but he was also a library man, and he was also a tower man. You know what I'm saying? So
carpenter, rabbi.
God became flesh and picked up a hammer. Yeah, exactly.
I have a question for you on that library part. That used to be me. I would be like, learn. And one of the things that kept me from getting out of the library is kind of like fear. Am I ready enough to go out and speak these principles? Is anyone going to listen to me? Is it going to be worth the time? And I think a lot of libertarians are stuck there because a lot of them are very philosophical. They have a lot of ideologies, are very, very intelligent people. I can literally say these people are very well read. But when you go out and have only a few of us are activists, a few of us are out there doing it, or they want only a few talking heads to be the talking heads instead of themselves doing it locally. What is your advice to them to start, get out of that library, go and see the sun?
Oh, by the way, that's exactly what I was thinking when you were talking. I was like, the Liberty Movement is very much in the library and to a certain extent in the tower.
Yes.
In the forge, not so much.
They're not really there. No, they're not there. Well, I would say some of the Liberty Movement, because again, my take on libertarianism is that it is an incomplete doctrine, not a bad doctrine, not wicked, not evil, but it's incomplete, right? Because there's not enough tower in it. You must have a conception of what a man is before you can say credibly that man should be free. If man is just talking meat, there's no particular reason man should be free. I mean, I'm very sorry. If man is just a smarter than average ape, then why on earth should man be free? If man is just a collection of atoms, why? Now, if man is sacred, if man is a sacred being, now we've got something. If man is a creation, then that's different. So, for example, my Christian libertarian friends, I believe that they have a complete doctrine. Go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna. No, you're. Yeah. I was. That is exactly where I was going to go. I think the same thing. Yeah, I mean, because there are a lot of libertarians who talk about natural rights. These are the rights that we were born with as men and women. But I do agree that a lot of our libertarian influencers don't really emphasize that part of it as much, and I think a lot of it is just because they already assume that people already believe that, or like people already know this stuff. But that's what happens when you don't focus on the forge enough, when you're not out there talking to people enough.
That's right.
You have to understand how to communicate, and when I'm thinking about the Liberty Movement, because there's some parallels with the conservative movement in why they're not able to get their message out, and they'll say, "Oh, we don't get ballot access." That's true. We get excluded from media. That's true. But at the same time, some libertarians will actually admit, but we also have done a bad job messaging. We've done a bad job about getting out there more. And there are people who are actively trying to fix that. So I am more optimistic on that. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that we need to take it on ourselves and figure out where we're going wrong to actually fix the problem, getting to the foundation of the problem. And I think that what you just laid out, the forge, the tower, the library, that is very applicable to what's going on in the Liberty Movement.
Yes, sir. I think I've met a lot of libertarians who, I mean, look, for that matter, going to what you said, that's one of my big problems with Ayn Rand, actually. I mean, the first time I understood what libertarians were in a practical sense, it was like I began to put together that, these are a bunch of guys who read Atlas Shrugged, who read The Fountainhead or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay.
Well, it's better than saying than just assuming that they're just Republicans who like to smoke weed.
Exactly. But what's interesting about reading her and listening to her philosophy is that she seems to think I mean, I understand that she escaped from a communalist system, right? From a system that was wicked in that way, a system that instrumentalized humans in a way that is very obviously and self-evidently wicked. Okay. But on the other hand, my problem with Ayn Rand is that she seems to think that like all the factory workers, for example, they're all moochers. Like she seems to subscribe to this great man theory of innovation, and at the expense of understanding that, listen, Henry Ford was indeed a great man. He was a visionary. He did build a great organization, and he deserved to profit from that. But he would not have profited from it had it not been for all the factory workers who actually brought his vision to life. And you see, you don't really understand like how much craft there is in industry unless you've gone and actually done that work. And I have the advantage of having worked all kinds of jobs before I got into the computer industry. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I've worked in restaurants. I've worked on construction sites. You know what I'm saying? And so you start. It was when I was working in the restaurant business, in kitchens, or working in restaurant kitchens, when I started to understand the importance of respecting the special knowledge in every person's job. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, no matter how simple you think their job is, there's something special that they're doing that's optimizing the task for them. And that if you're open to like listening to them, they can show you how to do that job better. I'll never forget. I was working the late shift at Uno's Pizzeria in the Baltimore Harbor Place, and this other brother who was there, I was a prep cook and he was a dishwasher, and so we were closing up the place, and he taught me how to mop a floor. And I don't know what it was where obviously I had mopped floors before, but you know, it was like, for whatever reason, I decided like not to have an attitude and just be like, I'm going to let this guy teach me how to mop a floor. And it's like, it just little things. Listen, put the soap in after, because you don't want a bunch of suds. That just gets in your way. Mop in this pattern. Do this. Go under here first. Sweep here. Do that. It like there was a formula, and everything he was doing was optimized so that he could do a good job as quickly as possible, get the hell out and go home. Now, that's a minor thing, but my point is that if you can respect, if you understand, right, how important it is to respect the special craft in people's jobs, then you can still reject communism and socialism, okay, without disrespecting the working people that make all that stuff possible, that actually realize the visions of the so-called captains of industry. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that goes for a guy working the late shift, the dishwasher on the late shift in a restaurant. It goes for some guy working the swing shift on an assembly line in some car factory somewhere. It's the same. You see, it's the same pattern. It's the same pattern of the same discipline of thought. You know, and that's what I find off-putting sometimes about libertarians. It's like, there's not enough gratitude there. Gratitude doesn't mean that you decide to let the state roll over you. Gratitude means that you approach things from that standpoint of gratitude, you know, like respect for institutions. And going to your point again about the library spirit versus the Ford spirit. Many libertarians or many people act like we can go from here to there in a heartbeat. Act like human nature is not a thing, right?
Yeah.
People understand why human nature necessarily short circuits us on our way to this communist utopia. They understand why socialism is a terrible idea precisely because of human nature. But people don't understand why, like, actually, if you simply snapped your fingers and deregulated the entire building industry, you wouldn't necessarily get the best possible buildings.
You know,
yeah, ripping the Band-Aid off may not always be the best idea in every situation. Yeah.
right.
But you don't know that unless you go on. Sorry.
And you know, we're anarchists too. Like me and Jeff, you know, we like burn it all down. Like we don't want it no more. But you know, being a libertarian, we get it. People aren't ready to get rid of their elections. People aren't ready to get rid of rulers in a sense. But if you get people in there who are not trying to rule over you, and they start presenting better solutions to get their government to function the way it was supposed to function,
yes,
that's where we're going with that. And you know, you have brought up, you know, the guy mopping the floor. I was growing up, my family consistently was like, I mean, y'all gotta work in the food industry at least once.
At least
So you
once.
guys can exactly know what is going on, because you have people who are like, oh my gosh, what's taking so long? Oh my God, you messed my food up. But they don't
Right.
understand that there can be other issues in between. Or they'll get
Yep.
mad, oh, she didn't write down my order. But she knows your order,
She
or
knows
he
your
knows
order.
your
Right.
order.
Right.
And
Calm
they
down.
can't comprehend how they can do that, because you can't do it doesn't mean they can't. And the
Right.
fact they have to be a people person, they have to be a salesperson, they gotta be able to clean. Because they're not just giving you food, they have to clean, they got roll silverware. I was a server, so
Right.
so they
Right.
gotta do all these different things. You gotta talk to the cook if something happens, messes up,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of stuff. And you have your manager. And that
Yeah.
person may have worked every single day that week because someone called off. And they may not be in the best mood. Remember that other people are human beings as well, like you said. Human
That's right.
nature.
That's right. That's right. And that's what I've always found most off-putting about my again, I love my libertarian people, but that's what I've often found most off-putting about them, is that they don't take into account where people are, and they don't have enough respect for the ordinary jobs that people do that make all the rest of this stuff work. And so
Yeah.
this sorry to cut you off, but this is also
No,
kind of
you're good.
this is also something that's kind of informed my saltiness with respect to Republicans because again, I for a very long time, well, since I kind of became politically aware in that way, right, about how profoundly conservative my ideas really were, you know, one of the ways I manifest my gratitude for having grown up, for having been given this life by two working class people, is that I talk to working class people all the time. Any chance I can get. The cat from UPS, the guy from FedEx, the cats cutting holes in the street, you name it, right? It's like if I can just strike up a conversation, whatever, 30 seconds would have you good to go. And what I have found is that most in New York, for example, like the black folks who work in these industries, right, whether it's the people working at the bank or, the road crew or whatever, are deeply conservative. That's what I've noticed. I've noticed that black folks, working class black people, are deeply conservative. Okay. Never mind who they vote for. That's a secondary matter. They are deeply conservative. So obviously I feel a kind of way when I see my fellow conservatives or people who call themselves conservative, right? Write off places like New York because, quote unquote, they vote Democrat. Let the cities burn. Let them have the cities.
Yeah, it's awful, huh? Like when I see that, I mean, and when I've seen that, even when I was more in the conservative movement, I was just like, what is wrong with you? And that kind of likens back to a point you were making about the liberty movement. I think the issue is that libertarians can come off very cold.
Yes.
Conservatives have the same problem. Like there's like a lack of humanity and compassion. Although conservatives will have compassion, but it's selective. It depends on who it's for, right? And
mentioned that.
Yeah, and historically, I've seen the libertarian movement has come off very cold, even though I agreed with the ideas. I think some of that's starting to change. Like when I see people like speaking at city council meetings at a government abusing somebody, that's how you come off as not cold. That's how you get the liberty-minded ideas out there without coming off cold, because now you're showing that you actually care about people who are being put upon by the government. But go ahead. I was interrupting because when you talked about, oh, well, they voted for it. Well, first off, you don't know whether they voted for it or not because your party is not there anyway. So
right, yeah, exactly. Well, and also, of course, I mean, they're numerically wrong because, if you first of all, yeah. You don't know how any individual person, typically you get that response when, something is shown where something bad happens to somebody. Well, you don't know how that person voted actually. And then even if you're willing to reason statistically about it, the fact is that, and we've talked about this a few times, there's a very large portion of black voters who just sit out these elections. Go look up the Brennan Center numbers for the 2020 election. Right? Only maybe 60-something% of eligible black people actually voted. The rest sat it out. So you got a third of that electorate just sitting there, neutral, right? Waiting to see which way to jump. Okay. Might they be spoken to? Might someone approach them and talk to them about things that they might care about? I mean, this is, in other words, like, you have to start to question the seriousness of a movement that refuses to expand its ranks in the middle of a war, supposedly. I mean, if they're coming for your children, do you know what I'm saying? If they're coming for your children, if they're poisoning you, if they're opening your borders, if you're being invaded, don't you think you need as large a fighting force as possible? Don't you need as many recruits as possible? But so why are you trying to basically make every excuse in the book to exclude as many people as possible? This shows me that this is not really an exercise in warfare for the future of civilization. This is basically satanic pride and blood worship or skin worship. And I'm not interested in blood worship and skin worship. I'm not. I'm sorry. The worship of false gods is one of the things that got us to this terrible state we're in right now. So I'm not interested in worshiping blood. Right?
See, and that right there is why I wanted to talk to you, because you have some very unique insights, and the way you put things is different, but it really describes what's going on. Don, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was for 1 second excited because I saw Dom, I don't know how to say his last name on Twitter.
Okay, keep talking. I'm going to grab my charger.
Okay. We're talking, no, he had a video he put up, the brothers in Chicago. And I'm like, okay. And I played the video and he just started off with Trump. This man said a whole bunch of other stuff, and the only part you played was acting as if, hey, Trump, you want to come and talk to us in Chicago? And I'm like, this man said all these other issues are going on. He didn't even say he was pro-Trump. He didn't even say he's pro-Republican. What he said was, these are the issues. Who's going to come to the table?
Who's going to come talk to us? I remember that video. Exactly. Yes.
And he also said this. He said, if you're for open borders, we're against you.
Right.
Period. Now it was like one of my things. I'm like, there's libertarians who are not for open borders. We just want to reform our immigration system so it's fair and it doesn't take forever for people to get over here. And there's our people who are focused mainly on having open borders. If you're going to run for anything right now, that's suicide. Like that's not going to work right now in 2024, especially with people from China, grown men in fancy suits crossing the border. Right. So my things when Dom did that, I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, that's messed up. I was like, Jeff, I've attacked enough conservatives this week. Can you put the rest of the videos in the comment section? My thing is, I'm not even trying to attack people, truly. I'm just pointing out something. They take it as an attack. And I'm like, fine. I mean, I'll wear it then. That's what you want to call it. But I don't necessarily attack these people. I attack the animal rights people. I attack the people trying to force their eating beliefs on me and trying to attack small farmers. I will attack them, and I'll proudly do it. I call that one girl. I called her a stupid bee because she was one. Because she tried to act like, oh, this is never going to happen. I'm like, they literally have made it illegal to eat dog. I understand most of us don't like eating dogs, but that's a target on a minority group of people who eat that, and cats. They're trying to get the horse meat gone. Now there's the UN's telling us that we need to consume less meat because it's hurting the environment. This is serious. These are lobbyists. These people have money. There's people in Congress on the left and right and on your state levels who are passing these laws for these special interest people, while y'all sit there and just laugh at them for the dumb stuff they put online in their commercials. But this is serious.
It's serious, right? I mean, look, one of the things, how can I put this? One of the things that that's been useful to me, right, having developed the Foundationist Manifesto and having developed Foundationism, is that I have a basis on which to turn around and I'll put it this way. I have a set of cognitive tools now that I can use to kind of put into words what I always thought was off about many conservatives. Do you know what I'm saying? I can say how I think their arguments, in other words, they may advocate a cause that is righteous in itself, but the substance of their argument is lacking in a certain way, and it turns people off. And with these cognitive tools, I'm better able to articulate why they turn me off. So, for example, you mentioned immigration a short while ago. So if you say, one problem that conservatives have is that they will state something in a way that makes it very easy for a dishonest adversary to mischaracterize that opinion. Okay.
That's right.
In other words, conservatives are always crying that, like, well, if you say that, they're going to say you're a racist. And you know something? As a matter of fact, they are right. Right? Is that the left does that, right? And progressives do that. And very often they are being, the left and the progressives, they're being dishonest when they do that. But if you'd put some work in and figure out how to make that exact same point in a better way, in a more foundationist way, for example, in a way that defends the individual, then you find that, like, the enemy, the adversary, has much less ammunition, right? And because, I mean, if you're in a war, look, it's their job to take shots at you. That's their job. They're not going to wake up one morning and decide, actually, you know something, we'll let that. No, it's like they're going to try to mischaracterize what you say. So talking about immigration.
Make it harder for them.
To make it harder for them, right? So talking about immigration, back to that point. When I talk about immigration, I talk about it from a foundation of radical equality. My default opinion about a Mexican is that he's a man like me.
That's right.
He's a creation like me, and he has a home. And when I go to his home, I have to stop at a port of entry and identify myself. There's a challenge point. That makes perfect sense. Oh, Mr. Taylor, hi, welcome to Mexico. Let me see your papers. How long will you be here? Who are you staying with? And when are you leaving? And don't make us come looking for you. The date on this visa is what it says. Thank you. Okay, on your way. Right?
Leave the toothbrush at home.
Okay. So and that's right and proper. So therefore, if he and I are equals, and I have to respect his home, then he has to respect my home. That's it. Now, if more conservatives argued about these things from that foundation of radical equality, right, which is, by the way, a theological foundation, it should be a Christian foundation, because they're always talking about Christianity. Well, yes, he is a child of God like you, but that means you're a child of God like him. Now, if more of them argued like that, there'd be less room for progressives to say, hey, that sounds kind of racist. Because the fact is, if all you have to say about immigration is, well, because they're raping and they're robbing and this. Now, first of all, listen, if there were, first of all, of course, there is a non-zero number of immigrants, illegal immigrants, who actually do commit crimes here and hurt people, obviously. But here's the thing. This policy would make no sense even if zero of them were committing crimes. Because the point is not what they do. The point is not what they do when they get here. The point is that they have not been given permission to be here. Yeah? So how come conservatives can't get it in their heads, yeah, to kind of shape the argument to cut off the adversary's oxygen, to make it harder for them to attack you and maybe outflank him? Because why? Because you're caught up in blood worship and skin worship and satanic pride, and that's a problem. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, I would say that, and I think this goes along with the satanic pride, the point that you made. It feels good.
Yes,
to say that they're going to come over here and rape all your women and all that stuff.
Yes, sir.
Like,
yes, sir.
It's more sensational. It's more
sounds familiar too.
Yeah,
it's pornographic, right?
And that's what I was going to bring up, because you use it. Because last time I heard you on a space, you talked about this pornographic approach that a lot of conservatives and Republicans have towards politics. And I
Yes, sir.
think I know what you mean when you say that, but this is one of the questions I've been wanting to ask. Can
Sure.
you kind of explain, because I think in terms of political pornography, things like that, what does that mean when you use that word?
That's a great question. Thank you. So the point, I talk about this as two different and opposing ways of understanding the world, right? The pornographic versus the holographic. This is not a defect of thought, by the way, that's unique to the right. Okay. Right. We'll talk about the left, how the left indulges in that in a minute. But basically, a pornographic understanding or pornographic view of something is something that disembodies an image, disembodies a part, okay, and magnifies it until it looks like the whole. That's pornographic understanding, right? So you disembody and magnify, right, and focus and try to discern deep truths from that magnified fragment. That is a pornographic understanding. Now you can see right away that while it includes sexual imagery, it doesn't have to have anything to do with sexual imagery, right? Mm-hmm. Sexual imagery is a subset of pornography. Do you see what I'm saying? Because that is exactly what you're doing. You're disembodying an image and you're magnifying it, and that's the thing, and you reason according to that. And what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is that, let's say in the case of sexual pornography, the problem is that when you indulge in it too much, when you hyper focus on a magnified fragment too much, a magnified disembodied fragment too much, then you're unable to deal properly with the proportional embodied whole, with the entirety. In other words, like you're some kid who's like addicted to porn and you don't know how to deal with a real woman, because a real woman is an entire being and she's active. Right. A real girlfriend will tell you to get your shit together, right? Or ask you to take out the garbage, or look at you and say, don't bullshit me, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something that the woman on the screen with her tits out is not going to say. So the pornographic understanding involves disembodying the part, magnifying it. The holographic understanding involves looking at each part and understanding that the whole is somehow represented in it. So you're doing the opposite of magnifying the part. You're trying to you're gaining deeper understanding because you're kind of overlaying your understanding of the whole on this part, but you're not disembodying it. You're not magnifying it. Everything is in its right place. So now when we talk about the pornographic understanding of history, the best example I can come up with is the people on the progressive left who are always talking about slavery, always talking about specifically black chattel slavery. Okay? Because yes, chattel slavery did happen, but first of all, black people are not only what was done to us. That's one. Right. And two, right. There's other nations in the world that also had a very brisk trade in slaves that no one wants to talk about, like Arab Muslims. Yep. Right. Like, yes. They're still doing it. They're still doing it. Thank you. Like the Europeans did it to us for 400 years, and they've been doing it for 1400 years. Right now. So if you have a pornographic view of American history, you're like slavery. Right. That's pornographic. Not that it's wrong, not that slavery didn't happen, but you're just magnifying that, and that's your whole sight picture. As opposed to a holographic view, which is much more interesting and much more complex.
Yeah, that's a huge gripe that I've always had. They want to limit black people, black descendants of slaves, whatever you want to call us. They limit us to our struggles.
Yes,
and
sir.
Right. The way I always say it is that they only want to talk about us getting our asses kicked. They don't want to talk about us kicking ass.
That's right.
They don't want to talk about us overcoming. And this isn't all of them, but there are a bunch of them who just hyper focus on what we went through, but they don't focus on what we did to solve those problems.
This is correct. This is correct.
And, I want to add to this, when you're talking about immigration and the left uses this tool and the right should know better. The Ku Klux Klan very much so hated immigrants that were not of the race they particularly wanted over here. So when you hear people on the right using that same rhetoric as the KKK, like you said, it makes it easier for the left to attack them and call them racist. Yeah, and then you sit out looking at, okay, you have Mexican for Trump, or you're talking about Hispanics for Trump. But then are you looking at, you're insulting all these people as if they're all illegals, as if they're all criminals and rapists. And then my other thing is, I think it's a good idea that we keep bringing up history for a different reason, because obviously we haven't learned our lesson. I think the bad things that happened in the past, we should look at it and look at not repeating it. Start paying attention to the patterns that exist today, so that we don't repeat what's happened before. Because I can't, the life of me, I can't understand why anyone could possibly have defended that little short midget, big forehead cop who had a man handcuffed on the car and tased him on his back, and have any reason, any way where you can stick up for the state for that behavior. And then I got attacked again yesterday because apparently I was making it about race, even though I didn't even bring race up one time. It just because I retweeted some people who had said something about race. And the original guy who posted it was talking about race. I reposted, gave credit to where it came from, and then I posted the video without the race stuff. Because I wanted to focus on the state's abuse on the people. Correct. And people are sitting there, and honestly, I'm actually really proud. A lot of people like the cop needs to get fired. Most people said that. But you still have the knuckleheads, even black people, knuckleheads, who are going to be that pick me little black person on the right to say, oh, I think that she was in the right, or he shouldn't have had a gun, he's a felon,
right,
or we shouldn't have drugs. We have a problem in our country where we have the war on drugs. That's a war on the people. They don't care about your health or anything, because they wouldn't be giving you these man-made drugs and forcing down your throat. They really care about you love the Second Amendment so much. If you guys in the right start becoming felons because they're creating laws that violate your rights, you can't have a gun. So now all of a sudden, when you're mad at someone else and say they should have a gun because I like the laws that they broke and got them to lose their guns, but no, I should be able to have my rights. Because imagine all those January 6 people. Do you think they can have guns? So you gotta you can't be picking sides off of your favorite kind of victims. We are all on the same team. It is us against the state.
Well, I'm very glad you mentioned the Second Amendment for obvious reasons. But before I jump into my personal story, what you said is very, very interesting, because it demonstrates what I've characterized as the kind of the atrophying of political thought and political reasoning that I think is a product of the Cold War. It's a product of Cold War thinking, right? And some people who've been in my spaces and been, heard my stuff have heard me beat this horse before. But basically, the idea is that we got into a very bad place during the Cold War where we were just where conservatives were just in the business of opposing something. And liberals were just in the business of opposing some other thing and embracing something that wasn't even endemic to the U.S. It was something foreign, right? Oh, yeah, we backed the Soviet Union. And this fallacy of opposition meant that our ability to reason about politics, to reason with each other, right? That ability atrophied, so that at the end of the Cold War, what did we have? Did we have an actual genuine conservative party and an actual genuine liberal party? No, we didn't.
Right.
We had two gangs of neoliberal hacks with different paint jobs and different talking points. Right?
The uniparty, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. That's a problem, right? And we're not going to get clear of that problem until we improve our political reasoning. And that doesn't mean, now you see, that's hearkening back to my reason for starting foundationism, right? Because it's not necessarily about, well, stop being on the left or stop being on the right or stop advocating. No, it's embrace certain habits of thought that will enable you to get past the mere partisanship of the here and now. And listen, I'm not against partisanship. A party is an instrument, right? Political parties are an instrument. Okay, but all instruments have limits. You see what I'm saying? In other words, for them to be useful, they have to be bounded in space and time and capability and scope. You see what I'm saying? If it's everything, it's nothing. So understand what the instrument is for, understand what it can do, understand what it can't do, right? The instrument of political parties cannot, by itself, improve the quality of your political thought. The party itself as an instrument cannot tell you whether something is good or bad as such. It can say what's good or bad for the party, but that's not the same thing as what is right or wrong as such. So we have to start improving the quality of our reasoning and not just opposing things, because that's where to Donnie's point, right? These people, when they pop up and they see, you'll post, or Johnny will post a link to some video where clearly the police officer is abusing his or her powers, right? And there's like, they're reacting to ghosts. They've got this mental image of someone who has done something wrong, who is a danger to society, and that mental image is causing them to be that shadow is causing them to be unable to see the actual events, the spectacle of an agent of the government abusing his power and bringing force to bear unjustly on a citizen. And then the same people will say, oh, well, the black helicopters, this and that, da. Listen, when tyranny comes for you, will not be coming with the black helicopters.
Right.
It will almost certainly be coming in the form of local police.
That's right.
And I'm not demonizing police. I think policing is an art, a very interesting art. I think it has a kind of a long and noble tradition, but we got lost somewhere along the way. And part of the reason why we got lost is because we were stumbling back. We were jumping back from something we thought we opposed and stumbling into something else, as per C.S. Lewis's quote. So, yeah.
And I think you're right. I mean, I think hyper-partisanship is one of the biggest dangers, because hyper-partisanship allows the government to get away with a lot of different things. I mean, if you only care about something based on party, if half the country is hyper-partisan and somebody gets abused, only half of the country is going to care, because it's all going to depend on the political beliefs of the person that's being abused, or the perceived political beliefs.
Yes.
Yeah, like there's a reason why the left went back the blue when Ashley Babbitt got shot. It wasn't because they thought she did something wrong. That wasn't the reason why. It's because she was a white Trump supporter. That's it. That's the only reason. That's the only reason.
Exactly.
Yeah. If Black Lives Matter had been engaged in that same exact activity, and Ashley Babbitt had been Black Lives Matter, they would be defending her. And conservatives would be backing the blue.
Would be back in the blue and saying, well, you don't know, she could have had a bomb in her backpack, da. Exactly. Yes. And so this, and of course, the way I see it is that on one level, of course, I'm calling out lefties, I'm calling out righties, whatever. But in a larger sense, the point is that this is, how can I put this? This is paralyzing our ability to grapple with the things that really matter. Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong, that matters too. Ashley Babbitt's death does matter. But what I'm trying to, so I shouldn't say really matter. Let me rephrase that. I should say that it interferes with our ability to come to terms and to figure out the order of battle against our common enemy. And our common enemy is our common enemy is hypercapital, and hypercapital's camp followers in government, in my opinion.
Right, and you know what? I had my opinions when I was a little bit more statist back then. When I watched what happened to George Floyd, back then I'm thinking, well, counterfeit money, drugs. These are vices. And another thing is, you don't even know for sure if he had counterfeit money or not. Like, anyone can have a counterfeit money and not know they have it. But when I was watching the video of the officer putting his knee on his neck, I felt this is wrong. This is awful.
That's wrong.
Same thing when I watched on video Ashley Babbitt dying, laying on the ground, bleeding. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's bad.
Those are at the end of the day, those are two human beings.
Exactly.
I didn't think about, this is MAGA, it's like those are two human beings who had died, in my opinion, on the hand of the state. It was the state. Both cases were the state. So if people could be united, everyone will be up in arms when a citizen is murdered by the state. And then the hyper-partisanship only benefits the state. It doesn't benefit any of us. And it's like a Super Bowl. It's like a Super Bowl championship. Just because your team won doesn't mean you get a Super Bowl ring or you getting some money for it. You may be able to have some bragging rights. You may have won some gambling money, but that's about it. You didn't really win anything. But honestly, you look evil when you're cheering for someone else's death.
Yes. Well, that's correct. That's correct. It's wicked, right? It's a wicked thing to do. It's sinful, right? But there again, I mean, I think, well, we can get to that later. I was gonna, you know by now that I have a whole rant about how, godless conservatism will not save us any more than godless liberalism will save us. But before I get to that, I just wanted to briefly touch on the most, going back to the small and the local and the close to home, right?
Mm-hmm.
My home, the state got very close to my home some time ago.
Let's talk about it, because I've been wanting to bring that up. So because I don't know anything about it, actually. I've heard you allude to it, but I haven't really heard you talk about it.
We're like
so
clean paper, we don't know nothing.
Yeah. Okay. So some time ago, I became interested in gunsmithing. Ever since I was a kid, I really, like most kind of red-blooded American kids, I was interested in guns and tanks and fighter planes and because it was cool, And so, but maybe 3-4 years ago, maybe I became really interested in gunsmithing. And I thought that this would be a really cool thing to do, really traditional and really kind of, and possibly even leading to a second career. I've been a software developer forever, but I also make stuff. And so anyway, fast forward a bit. I started actually building weapons. I started building firearms. So I learned from guys like Machine Gun Builder. Machine Gun. Marine gun builder, right, who builds pistols, 80% pistols. It's like I found out that, you can actually legally buy a receiver and you can machine that receiver to completion, and you buy your parts and you put together, and you've got a pistol or a rifle. And once I saw that, I was hooked. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. This is the most cool thing you could possibly do in your machine shop, because I have a machine shop in my basement. And so, I make furniture and I make different stuff, and that's a whole other story. But anyway, I started doing that, and there was no subterfuge. It's like I bought them on my credit cards under my name because they were my weapons that I built. And at a certain point, the state of New York took an interest. And in April of 2022, a joint SWAT ATF task force raided my house, like broke down my door and everything. And it was. I remember it's like April 6th, was it? Yeah. And I'd gone to bed listening to an audiobook, woke up, and I heard voices that were not the audiobook, and then I heard a bang, and then I heard, where are my police? Don't warn me, that kind of sound, and I saw weapon lights flickering under the door of my bedroom. So first thing I did was I said, hello, hello, hello. I thought they had the wrong place, because it never occurred to me that someone quietly sitting at home manufacturing rifles or pistols or whatever would be a problem that New York State was like, we've got to go and get this. It just never occurred to me that anyone would come up in my house like that. Like, I have a clean criminal record, right? I'm a member in good standing of my local gun range. I'm like 50 some odd years old. I'm gainfully employed. I've lived in Brooklyn forever. It's like I'm not like nothing. And the stuff I post on my fiery political manifesto, is like see deeply, listen closely, reason honestly. So it never occurred to me that like I would somehow attract the attention of the authorities. But in any case, I did, and they raided my house, and I spent a week in Rikers Island, and
Wow.
and I'm so right now I'm in a fight for my freedom. Basically, I'm facing multiple counts of felony weapons possession, and they want to send me to prison for 18 years. 18 years. Yeah. I made quite a few rifles. I think it was like 8 rifles. And I made a handful of Glock style pistols too. All of them 80%. And remember, I never talked about rifles or gunsmithing online. I never showed pictures of my weapons online because I didn't want to attract that type of energy. I didn't want, the people who were like, I wish somebody would break into my house. Like, I'm not interested in that. Right. It's like, it's sinful to want to, it's righteous to defend yourself, right? But it's sinful to want the confrontation. Do you understand what I'm saying? So yeah, I never, and never did any of those things. It's like I built this stuff for me. I also, once I started building weapons, I began to immediately see that yes, I could in fact bring my knowledge as a software engineer to the world of weapons science. And so I started to develop, weapons science, and kind of theoretical frameworks for doing different stuff. I developed a framework called cyclic energy flow, which posits that any semi-automatic rifle is basically a circuit, but it's a mass flow circuit. It is a mass flow circuit. And so you can start to see that, for example, a mass, for example, the buffer weight at the rear of the weapon, that is a resistor. The spring is the capacitor. Your gas tube is a wire, right? And if given a specific powder charge in your ammunition, in your cartridge, and a few other variables, if you hold those steady, you should be able to infer what kinds of masses and weights you need and spring tensions and so on to put together a weapon that is roughly in tune. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily new. I'm sure that like firearms manufacturers have something like that, but it's proprietary. My thought was to do something like that and kind of make it open source and have a software stack. I had ideas for how to automate brass inspection for the hand loading community. Middle-aged guys, older guys, your eyes aren't so good anymore. How do you inspect your brass automatically so you don't accidentally make yourself a round that'll explode in your face? All these things. It was like a new lease on life, like gunsmithing for me. And now I'm in the position of having to fight for my freedom because according to the state of New York, the Constitution does not matter and the Bruin ruling does not matter. Right. So going back to our conversation, one of the reasons I'm so salty with my fellow conservatives is because they tend to do a very good job of focusing on the bad things that happen in cities like New York. Right. They tend to they're very good at focusing. They're very good at focusing on, if some knucklehead snatches a purse or knocks someone down in the street or mugs somebody or goes on a shoplifting spree. They're right there with the crime porn. Right.
Right. Right.
But the facts of my case are a matter of public knowledge. Where are the conservatives on that? How many conservatives have reached out to me to talk about my case? I can count them on one hand and have fingers left over. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Chris Cooper from National Gun Rights and Sonny Johnson. Those are the people who I've appeared on Sonny Johnson's show and I appeared with Chris Cooper on in a video interview. And now I'm appearing with you and Donnie. But like there are very few, given all the conservatives who are very chest out about the Second Amendment, it's disappointing that more of them, it's disappointing to me, right? That more of them aren't taking an interest in this. And not because necessarily it would be helpful to me. It may not be helpful to me. I may go to prison anyway. Okay? And for the record, the state offered me a plea deal and I refused it. They offered me like less than half the amount of time, like 8 years, and I'm like, no, thank you. It's like if I'm gonna go to prison, like I don't want to go to prison. I know it's a terrible place, But as far as I'm concerned, now that I didn't want this fight, but now that we're in this fight, now that I am in this fight, it's a fight that has to be fought. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is a civil rights issue. And my legal team thinks the same thing. New York State has no more right to tell me that I may not keep and bear arms than it has to tell me I have to sit in the back of the bus. Or it has no more right to tell me that I can't manufacture weapons at home quietly. One of the most traditional things you could possibly do as an American. They have no more right to tell me that than they have to tell me to enter by the colored entrance. And I'm not putting myself anywhere near on the same level as our civil rights elders, not for a second. But at the end of the day, they were called, right, and they stood up. Okay? So all I can do is stand up. You know, and what I want now is, listen, of course I'd love to stay out of prison, but if I can't, right, then what I'll settle for is embarrassing the liberals and progressives who run some of our cities, including New York. I want to blow a big smoking hole in that specific narrative. Tell me again how you think, because you said it, I didn't say it, you said it. Tell me again how you think that there's murderous white supremacists everywhere getting ready to lynch me from a traffic light, but I shouldn't be armed, right? Tell me again how you are so concerned for my welfare in the face of this epidemic of murderous white supremacy. You're so concerned for my personal safety and welfare that you're willing to defy the laws of this republic and put me in prison for 18 years. Tell me again how Shailene Rodriguez, who chased a man down the street in the Bronx with a weapon, with a machete, it's on camera, traipsed into the precinct, traipsed back out same day. Tell me again how people are having fistfights with cops and walking out of the precinct same day. Tell me again how two people threw a Molotov cocktail into a parked police unit, and each, I think they each ended up sentenced to a year in prison. And I spent a week in Rikers Island, and they want to do me for 18 years. And you say you care about black folks? Okay, I want everyone to pay attention. I want everyone come look at this, and because I'm not some Republican, I'm not going to disrespect my people by saying, and that's why you should vote for. No, I don't care who you vote for. I still don't care who you vote for. Right. But I want everyone to pay attention and rethink when these people tell you they care about you, when these people say they care about your community, look at what they do. This is an object lesson. That's yeah, yeah, that's all I can do. I can't make the state of New York obey the law, right? What I can do is embarrass the state of New York. And that's what I intend to do.
That's true. My wheels are spinning right now because I'm so sick and tired of this. I'm tired of seeing this. I'm tired of the abuse. Like the 18th Amendment violation. Like, first of all, it's just a complete violation of your rights. It's evil. They just want to take you and throw you in a cage as if you're not a human being. I'm irritated. I'm thinking, who's the judge? Who's the prosecuting attorney? I'm not going to ask you on air what their names are.
And I'm not going to answer on air. But the details of my case are public knowledge, so people can go find that. But I would say, and I have to say this, because I mean it. It's like, if anyone's listening to this and they're thinking of contacting the political authorities to register their displeasure, I would say above all, be polite, be brief. Okay. Do you know what I'm saying? This is very important. Anyone who cares about this issue, right? Engaging with these people in a way that's rude or discourteous or anything else. And I'm not talking to you all particularly, but you know what I mean? Challenging them in that way does not help me. Right. It does not help.
Exactly.
And it's wicked on its own merits, right? Challenging people, I'll do the opposite of Maxine Waters. If you see these people in the street, leave them alone. Leave them alone. Right. Cross the street, go the other way. You see what I'm saying? Let them have the peace, let them have the peace of mind that they're not giving me. Exactly. Show them that we're better than they are. You see what I'm saying? But by all means, if people want to contact, because we have an attorney general, and we have several district attorneys who, again, have made a big deal about caring about the safety and the welfare of black people.
Yeah,
let's hold them to it. Do they really care? I don't think they do. I think they're stuck in an ideological pocket. And that's what they're doing, and it's unfortunate. May God open their eyes, because
And the reason why I bring that up is because I think in a lot of cases people don't realize who does what, because who gave them permission to go break into your house? A judge had to sign some affidavit, and someone gave them supposedly enough information for them to go and storm into your house the way they did.
Yes, that's right.
And then so people understand that process. I did not know it a few years ago. I've learned it, working with people who've been targeted by the government, how this all works.
Yes.
And then these people are elected, but the problem is there is a monopoly on our justice system with the attorneys. where they tell you, oh, you cannot be a judge or you cannot be a district attorney if you do not have, if you're not certified to be practice law.
Yeah.
And that's wrong, honestly, because the Sixth Amendment says counsel. It does not say that you have to be go to a bar association, none of that stuff. Because an attorney existed back then when the Bill of Rights was implemented. It said counsel. If it wanted to say attorney or lawyer, it would have said that, but it says counsel. And so now we're stuck in this monopoly of our justice system. People say, we want justice reform, justice reform. Well, I don't think people who are screaming it understand the root of the problem. They see what is happening from the problem, but they don't see the root of the problem and how we can start solving that locally. Yes. Because if everyone's so distracted looking at the president and the little theater going on in Congress all the time, they don't see the local. They forget the deep state in our own backyards, and our deep states are deep.
That's a very, very good point. It's like because you could say that any state that is that any portion of the state which is unaccountable to the people, right, can be said to be deep, right? It's in other words, it's deep enough that you can't get rid of it easily,
right?
And
it's hell,
right?
Because they can just throw you in the furnace if they want to. Like, you're done. You have no humanity. You can't eat when you want to. You can't go shopping. You can't be free anymore. You can't have anything. And if we have you working here, we're going to give you a few cents an hour for your work so you can buy a piece of toilet paper.
Well, I mean, again, the matter of conditions inside the prison system or in the pretrial detention system, that's a separate matter, right? And I want to put that in a separate bucket. The main thing I'm concerned about now or the main thing I want to call attention to now is the fact that that again, these people have a number of narratives, at least one of which has to go, at least one of which does not fit. Either they don't believe that there are murderous white supremacists everywhere,
right,
waiting to lynch us from traffic lights, or they don't really care about us like they say they do. And either one is fine. I just want them to. I want that clarifying moment. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's something that I've always said about these progressives who pretend to care about us. I think it's both. I don't think that they really believe that there are white supremacists around every tree waiting to lynch us, I don't think they really care about us.
That's right. That's exactly right. Right. And look, here's the good news is that, I think you're quite right. Black people don't have any permanent friends either in Albany or Washington. All we have is permanent interests. The good news is that the same thing is true of our white brethren. They don't have any permanent friends in Washington. All they have is permanent interests. And again, remember, for years, I've been thinking about this. I've been coming to understand this struggle as more than just Democrat and Republican, which is ridiculous, and more than black versus white, which is retarded, but as a, and I don't mean class struggle in this weirdo commie way. I mean that the people who make civilization work, right? Like people like my dad and my mom, the people you see, like, sometimes when there's guys working on the track and you're, on the subway, what have you, and you see guys, the track instructors guys, the guys who cut open the street, the guys who fix the traffic lights, what have you, like the people who, like, we outnumber them. And you see, they don't really run the world. They just issue instructions. And it's the people who actually maintain the mechanisms of the world that actually run it. We have all the skill sets. They have none. Mm-hmm. And we actually happen to be able to figure out coexistence just fine, actually. We've shown that we're able to figure out how to live with each other, how to come to terms with each other, how to settle our disputes. We only need them for a very few things that none of us can do by him or herself. You know what I'm saying? Protect the national borders, provide for the national defense, and so on and so forth. Okay, so, but I see again and again what I see gets in the way of that, to the point that Donnie made earlier, is this kind of, it's satanic pride, and this kind of worship of one's own skin, worship of one's own blood, because again, everyone understands what divide and conquer really is. It's like they understand it, but they don't understand it, because then they go right back to rooting for police officers who abuse their authority merely
Right,
because the object
right.
of the abuse is a particular color. And by the way, I see black people do this too. I don't like it when
Oh, yeah.
we do it either. I don't like it when we do it either. No. You know, and by the way, here's what's the funny thing too. You know, I talk to some of these racists online every now and then. You know, I've run across them. And the sad thing is they don't even know about their own history. You know, like I've run across quite a few people who talk about, yeah, white this and da-da-da-da-da, and you people, da-da-da-da, 1550, 1560, the 1560 fallacy, right? And it's like, da-da-da-da-da, and white, da-da. I'm like, okay, what happened to Blair Mountain? Huh? It's like, well, excuse me, you don't know what happened to Blair Mountain? You didn't know about the Cold Wars? You didn't know what happened at Homestead? When Carnegie's workers jumped out against the Pinkertons that were coming to shoot them up? You don't know what happened at the Haymarket incident? You see what I'm saying? It's like I'm trying to paint a picture that is as large as is possible, so we can fight under a banner that is as the word inclusive has kind of been ruined, but as inclusive as possible. It does not mean that we can't look out for our own individual tribes. In fact, we should. And I'm on record as being pro-tribalism. Because, of course, the people who, my brethren who live in Appalachia, for example, you know, they have their own folk ways. They have their own history, their own traditions. Of course, they should stand up for those things. You know, and my brethren who live elsewhere, they're going to have their own history. And of course, they have to stand up for those things. But we are meant to stand up for those things as a kind of a natural part of our own existence, as an affirmation that we are in fact creations. But then our brother over there of a different paint job with a different history is also, he's also a creation. You understand what I'm saying? And this is, to me, this is the only way we're really going to be able to take the fight, quote unquote, to the enemy in a political sense, is when we can understand that, like all our different tribes, it's possible for these different tribes that we have to come to terms, okay, maybe align on only one or two issues, and then depart in peace from each other when it comes to the other stuff. No one has to want to live near me. I may not want to live near you. Right?
I don't want to live near nobody.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know that you've got a hard stop coming up, so I want to.
My hard stop actually disappeared. Believe it or not, they called to reschedule that interview. So we have more time if you want to take more.
Okay. Well, first off, I mean, I want to say, like, with the gun case.
Yes, sir.
And again, I didn't know much about it. I thought that this was like some sort of lawsuit or something like that. I had no idea that they're trying to put you in a cage for 20 years, for 2 decades.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We've got to get more attention on this. Like, there's no reason why there shouldn't be more attention on this. This is egregious. And I know we'll talk offline about this, but
yes, sir.
Right.
I mean, Donnie and I are going to use our platforms as much as possible to get this out. And
our resources.
Yeah, and resources. There's
I got people in my brain I'm picking up off the top of my head. Spike Cohen, Maj is going through his thing. And also Larry Sharp, he's running for governor again. So his campaign could definitely most certainly help put a highlight on that.
We were actually supposed to talk to Larry Sharp some time ago, but we just had scheduling problems. My lawyer knows Larry Sharp.
Okay.
I'd love to. I mean, I am down to talk to anybody, anytime, as long as they're pro 2A, right? I'm staying away from mainstream media because for obvious reasons. But absolutely, 100%. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll talk to my resources too, because I work with 3 different organizations. Yes, we do mainly focus on the animal ownership piece of it, but we help people outside of that too. So. It's just that's how they operate.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, before we sign off, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and all that good stuff? Or do you have like a GoFundMe or thing for your legal fees? Or
I do. I have a Give Send Go, and the link to it is in my Twitter profile. It's Give Send Go. The givesendgo.com/dtaylor DTAYLOR _2A_legal. Right. That's my campaign. So, because again, Carbon Mike is my online name, Dexter Taylor is my real name. It sounds so weird to say that because I've been operating under this behind this wall of secrecy for a very long time, but it's the jig is up now.
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, but yeah, on Twitter I'm Future Radiocast, and my a link to my GiveSendGo is in my profile. Of course,
do you have a website yet?
Do I have a I have a website. I believe it or not, I haven't even put my GiveSendGo on my website yet. I haven't updated my website in a long time. The website is FutureRad, www.futurerad.io, futurerad.io. And that's really more of a website that talks about foundationism. And it talks about, I've got some interview. I haven't updated in a long time, but it's got some podcast interviews I've done. I've talked with some amazing people. I talked with Yana Hain from the Wall of Faces project, which is a project to put faces to every name on the Vietnam War Memorial. I actually did some local detective work here in New York for Colonel Dana Quist, who was the point man on that project, to try to find one guy. I think it's Sergeant Vincent Taylor. That's an interesting story we can get into another time. I've talked with Professor Rachel Fulton Brown. I've done a couple of episodes with Father Jamie Franklin, Church of England, on his podcast. I've been really, how can I put this? I'm in an interesting space. I'm in an interesting fix right now with the state of New York, but I'm grateful. This journey, put it that way, this journey has been very interesting, and it's caused me to cross paths with a lot of interesting people. It's caused me to kind of grapple with a lot of interesting ideas, and I'm glad to be here. I wish I weren't in this particular fix. But yeah, people who want to know more about foundationism, because I think that's again, I lead with the principle, not with the person. That's where you'd go. You'd go to futurerad.io. Again, you'd also go to YouTube. You'd look up the Infinite Jigsaw podcast. Danny Duran, shout out to Danny. He's talked to a lot of really cool people. But he and I also did a 10-part series on the Foundationist Manifesto, where, half hour at a time, he and I will talk about, what does it mean to see deeply? How can we do that better? What does it mean to listen closely? What does it mean to reason honestly? So on and so forth. And that's if nothing else comes out of this, that's what I want to push, because I think that's the most important thing for our future as a republic, is to find a way to come to terms with each other as citizens of this republic, and to understand that that's what we're here to defend, not parties, right, but principles, right, and here to defend the principles, that are behind the American experiment, because it's a great experiment. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we definitely got to have you back on, because I feel like even in this amount of time, we've only scratched the surface of the things that we all can talk about. I mean, you've got a lot of depth of knowledge, a lot of great ideas. So, so we'll definitely have you back on. But thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it, and thanks, Donnie.
Of course. Thank you.